Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do, the podcast that talks about human development and psychology to maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And today we're talking about religion and well-being in late life. Some of you might be religious, some of you might not, and we all want to have some well-being in late life, so, that's something to look into. Religion seems to play a supportive role for many elderly people, such as Jimmy Carter. And it does. A lot of older people, like I said, the joke in the movie was so-and-so's old and they're trying to get into heaven. We stopped thinking about so much secular stuff because we don't have to work anymore. The kids are all grown and everything. And so we started thinking about what comes next. We know in the late adulthood, something's going to come next because we're going to check out at some point. Possible explanations include social support, and there are people who do go to church. I used to call a church that a woman I know went to that county's social club because that's why they went there. They went there to socialize, and there were even rude conversations going on while the preacher was up there talking. And I was like, this is not a church. This is a social club, and I didn't care for it because that's not why I was there. Encouragement of healthy lifestyle, and some churches do. They have fitness programs. There's a big church here that's some from my friends. We went there. It wasn't for us, for one reason or another. But they have a gym. They have a track. You can walk around. They encourage healthy lifestyles and everything. And so that is something that some churches do. The perception of a measure of control over life through prayer. And, you do have a certain amount because, God will answer your prayers. But eventually, it is up to God, if, like, sometimes, oh my gosh, when I'm praying at night and if I ask for things, I'll say, if it be thy will, because ultimately I know it's up to him, not me, and I don't, want to be praying all the time for stuff, and be disappointed if he doesn't do what I think he should do. So I know that it's his will, not mine, but he does want me to ask. And, like Jesus said, you have not because you ask not, ask. Fostering of positive emotional states. And in general, oh my gosh, I'm still not quite over this flu. Church and spirituality do foster positive emotions. There are some that do negative things and you shouldn't belong to those. But, in general, a sense of belief does foster positive emotions in you. Reduction of stress, because if there's a higher power who's in charge of things, and he's going to watch out for you, then you don't have to be so stressed out as the average person who doesn't believe that anything is there, that it's just all random and anything could happen in any second. Excuse me. And faith in God as a way of interpreting misfortunes. Like I said, no one's life's going to be perfect, but if there might be a reason, there might be a bigger plan, then that is a little easier to take than just thinking, life's unfair, everything's unfair, and this happened and that's not right. There are people like that and they're just stressed out all the time. But does religion actually improve health and well-being? There are studies that say it does. Studies have found that religious involvement seems to have a mostly positive impact on physical and mental health and longevity. So there you are. Because most people who have a faith have a more positive outlook than people who think just stuff's happening to them. So it actually can impact you in positive ways. A review of research found positive associations between religiosity or spirituality and well-being. So, people who believed in something were feeling better about life than people who didn't believe in anything. Marital satisfaction, because if you believe that God ordained marriage, one man, one wife for life, then you're more likely to listen and be, with your partner than someone who's just hopping around with everybody. And psychosocial functioning, again, that's how you think, how you relate with other people. And negative associations with suicide. So, I had a case where a woman was talking about, someone I know who was a little depressed, and they said, oh, well, they're not going to, kill themselves because they don't believe in that. And, that's a lot of the times true, is if you have a faith that frowns upon such things, then you're more likely to not want to do that and end up in a place where you don't want to end up in. Delinquency. Again, I hear, some of the women I used to go up to the radio station with. I was on a radio program, and they would say, these kids now, they need Jesus. That's what they need. Somebody needs to take them to church. They need Jesus. And it's probably true. If they were more involved in the church and doing things, they wouldn't be out on the street doing things they shouldn't be doing. Criminality, again, same thing. If you're believing that somebody's watching and that there's a system of checks and balances, and that you're going to get punished or rewarded based on what you did, you're less likely to do bad things because you're going to have to pay for them later on. And drug and alcohol use, again, if somebody's watching, you're less likely to abuse the body, which is the temple that you were given. Elderly African Americans are more involved in religious activity than elderly white people. Don't get on me for that. It's right out of the psychology book. Don't call me racist, whatever. It's right here. This is the fact. You can deal with your feelings. I'm going to deal with the facts. And black women are more involved than black men. For elderly black people, religion is closely related to life satisfaction and well-being. And there are studies. The names of the studies are here. If you want to know, Google them. Figure it out. Because I'm not going to sit here and name all these studies and years for you, because that's not the message. However, among black men, the most significant factor in satisfaction is self-rated religiosity, whereas for black women, the significant factor is the number of hours spent on church work. So, men are more concerned with how they present religiously, and women more for doing, and that's, I've heard that in many churches, as if we didn't have our women, we wouldn't have a church. So, people with the most or the least religious commitment tend to have the highest self-esteem. So, that's interesting. People with the most faith and the least. And here's why. The emotional benefits non-religious people derive from strong commitment to secular values are similar to the benefits religious people derive from a strong faith in God. So, sometimes faith in not having faith can be as strong as your faith in God. People who are just dead sure there's not one, and this is it, can have just as strong a belief in that as people who believe in God. Or it may be that people's self-esteem is highest when their behavior is consistent with their beliefs. Again, that's something that people can have some problems with cognizant dissonance in, is if you believe in one way, but that's not how you're behaving. Young folks have that. They might believe a certain way, but then they behave with their friends another way. And some people, in the workplace, they believe a certain way, but they behave with the folks there in a different way. So that's the number one way to cause yourself some cognizant dissonance, is believing one way and behaving another way. So that's something you need to reconcile if that's a problem for you. Whatever those beliefs may be. So, if you have a strong faith, that's going to help you. If you have a strong faith that there's no reason to have faith, that also can help you. But that means you're only going to get rewarded here in this life, not in the next, because you didn't believe, so you're not going to be taking part in that. No offense, you're just going to be gone. religion and well-being in late life, religion can play a part in well-being in late life. So that's interesting. So the folks, who have that edge, that's good for them in their late life, is that they know something's coming next. And that's where I'm going to leave you for today. Hope that helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. Thanks for watching or listening. That's all for now. Until next time.